Get this, you can learn your fingerpicking patterns properly with proper fingerings, proper notes, and proper timing. We're talking following the tutorials to the letter from your favorite content creator or teacher and still sound flat. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 2 tips that rely on physics and a little bit of musical imagination. Not a lot, but just enough to make your arpeggios sound smooth. Hello and welcome friends to episode 2 of Ukulele Sessions. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mustafa and this is MK Fingerstyle Academy, where all the cool ukulele fingerstyle content is happening right here, right now. Let's get into it. But before we start the video, I want you to write down in the comment sections what tips do you have to make your arpeggios stand out and not sound flat. So to explain those tips, we need an arpeggio that is recognizable and super easy. And I can think of only one arpeggio for that job. The intro to Nothing Else Matters. Metallica's Nothing Else Matters on the ukulele starts with a simple A minor arpeggio. That's me playing 2nd fret on the 4th string, the A note, and then open 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. And I'm using my thumb, index, middle, and ring. Pretty basic, right? So why do most amateur students sound flat like this? And professionals don't. There are really only 2 things that I'm doing to spice up my arpeggios and make them come to life and capture my audience's imagination. The first is that I don't think of my arpeggios as a single layer when I look at the tabs. See, when I look at the tabs, I see that my 4th string is my bass layer, and this bass layer happens underneath the accompaniment and underneath the melody. But the bass layer dictates the harmony and tells us which harmonic world we live in. In this case, that is A minor. So I have to make sure that I pop my bass and make it audible to my audience. And the way I do that is by making sure that I hit my bass a little bit louder than my accompaniment, and I give it a nudge of a vibrato to make sure it stands out underneath my accompaniment. So this is how I'm isolating my bass layer. Now when it comes to the accompaniment, these are not really important notes. They are just there to give us context for the melody and the bass. So what I do is I play them with lower volume. And I do that by lowering the force in my right hand fingers. And here is the magic trick. I play them slightly behind, closer to my bridge, in the ponte region of my instrument. And that makes them sound thinner and less full than my bass, which gives the accompaniment and the bass 2 dimension. And wait till you hear what happens when the melody comes. The melody comes on the 1st string with my ring finger. So it has to be the loudest. You just have to be conscious that whenever you hit a melodic line, regardless of which string it is on in the arpeggio, that you make it pop and stand out on top of the other layers. So back to my ring finger, I just have to make sure it is louder and warmer than my accompaniment. This of course only happens when you have a proper instrument. This is why when I buy an instrument, I spend my time playing it and testing it to see if it does the job. I don't care how expensive it is or who made it. If it doesn't do what I want it to do, then it's just not worth the money. Good instruments will give you tonal variety, especially in arpeggios. So to recap, tip number 1 is about you using your eyes to scan the tab or the music sheet and isolate the arpeggios into their own layers. And of course, a little bit of music theory and private lessons from an experienced teacher would go a long way in teaching you how to spot those layers. But trust me when I say, with a little bit of variety in the pieces that you learn and conscious effort to see those layers, you'll develop that experience in no time. Now, of course, you can supercharge that learning curve with my Ukulele Fingerstyle Basics course, which is filled with arpeggio-based pieces alongside melodic pieces that focus on scale techniques. In those arpeggio pieces, I spent the time to teach you how to spot those layers and how to isolate them and make them not sound flat. So if you're interested in learning fingerstyle properly on the ukulele, make sure to check it out in the video description. But with that out of the way, let's go to tip number 2. Tip number 2 relies a lot on the first tip in the sense that to make your melodies stand out, you have to play them louder and more tasto. Tausto means warmer, which refers to you playing closer to the neck on the opposite side of the ponte. Now the problem with this is that with the proper posture and proper technique, the free stroke technique for fingerstyle, your fingers are naturally positioned in such a way where your melodic string is naturally positioned closest to the bridge, which means it will be the thinnest sounding string. If you don't believe me, let's use a ruler. Here is my hand positioned in proper free stroke. If you look, the first thing that touches the ruler is the thumb. My thumb is closest to the Tausto region. After that is my index, then it's my middle, and tucked all the way underneath is my ring finger, hidden all the way there in the thin region of my ukulele. So how do we counter that? If you recall, with the proper posture, my right hand is free to float across the color palette of my instrument. So now what I want you to do is watch how I play the arpeggio of Nothing Else Matters and keep track of where my right hand is in relation to the layer that I'm playing. And notice how each arpeggio sounded different from the one before it, because it's a dynamic relationship between the performer and the instrument, and I'm using my ears to dictate what I want to come next. In other words, they shouldn't all sound the same. But each one of those arpeggios followed the tips that we talked about: isolation of layers and making sure that I play Tausto on my melodic layer. Now, of course, if you're playing arpeggios at blazing speeds, you don't have time to move your right hand across the tonal palette of your instrument. But I would argue for the most of you watching this video, you're not at that level yet, and you'll end up playing arpeggios at a slower speed anyways. So it's the perfect opportunity to develop that sensitivity and connection with your instrument. And even if you are at the level of playing pieces crazy fast, you still have tip number 1 to help you make your arpeggios stand out by isolating the layers using vibrato and volume. And you control that by how hard you hit the string. But I'm here to tell you that while the techniques might get harder as you progress through the repertoire, the concepts taught in this video will still apply. And when you do, I want you to share a video on Instagram or Facebook and tag me so I can give you some feedback and see all the lovely work that you're doing.